And here comes the superstars, the important core of the agility now, which is evolving, which is people agility. If you see in Shane's talk, though he has touched upon various bands, and where he was giving a lot of pause, and the important tone was for the people, right? The metaphor between the mission and the garden. So initially, people thought that wonderful product will fetch money, and then they thought, no, that's not working. Then they introduced some process into organizations, and even that was fetching a limited revenue. And then they finally realized Agile is more about people, and there should be a striking balance between people, process, just enough process, empowered people, and a wonderful product. This balance is what now organizations are trying to fetch, and this is the right composition for success of any organization. In the same lines, I would like to invite people agility panel, the chairperson of this panel. The first session, this is split into two because there is a lot of research paper came into this, no, so we have split it into two. The first one is taken care by Nagini Chandramouli. I think no introduction is needed for her, as
Come on.
Deepthi has given also no a good intro about her, but still as formally in this interview,
We lost your voice, Padma.
sorry. So she
No.
hit her
Yeah.
silver jubilee in industry. Okay, so
Yeah.
25 years, yeah, industry experience. She's currently an
Yeah.
enterprise executive with Bank of America, and she was also a VP of no PMI chapter of Pearl City, Hyderabad. A very rich experience, wonderful human being, very supportive. She's like no a friend behind us for any of agile stuff. So many thanks for being chairperson of this panel, Nagini, and my wonderful buddy Nazad, and she will be the discussant of this panel. Very supportive, and she's an independent consultant now, working for more than 20 years in industry. Now she has taken the path of independent consultant, and she's all through her career she was into agile deliveries, and keeping into many of fixing belief and practices and empowering the people to implement the real agility. And now she is an passionate mother and an independent consultant pursuing like open goals like what we are doing. She has been extensively supportive throughout this journey of era conference. And I'm really thankful for her support in this journey. And she also loves to conduct large scale agile awareness programs. Now I'm just giving the panel permission to Nagini and Nazar. They will introduce the researchers. Exciting results are on the way. Just keep tuned in. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Nazat, all yours.
Thank you, Padma. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Deepthi and Kiran. Amazing papers. I welcome you all once again to the People Agility theme. This is a modest attempt to present to you the outcome of research. Some theoretical, some practical, some experimental, some experiential on topics which can be related to by each one of us. We understand the importance of the 3 Ps of agility: people, process, and product. Here we have 2 amazing papers discussing the people aspect. The protocol to be followed with respect to questions and clarification has been clearly mentioned, so I don't have to reiterate. Please go ahead and start posting questions as and when you get them on the chat window, or else we anyways have a slot at the end of the session. The first presenter is Shruti Kulkarni. Shruti, if you can bring up your slide. Great, thank you. She's a passionate agile practitioner with experience in various fields, especially technical. She's a Scrum Master and an agile coach. Promoting kindness at workplaces, Shruti is here today with an approach, humble agile, an individual's guide to overall agility. Speaks about quality practiced on a foundation to achieve better results with being agile. Over to you, Shruti. We are so eager to hear from you.
Thank you. Thanks, Nasa. Firstly, what a run. I think there's been some great papers. I'm going to try to keep up the interest. Thanks, Nasa. Thank you. So I'm going to start by just sharing what I'm here to present. Firstly, Humble Agile. It's a study that seeded years ago, substantiated this year. Thanks a lot to Padma's push. It's called Humble Agile. It's a collection of 6 qualities that can be practiced together on the base foundation of kindness and compassion. This is a study that has been conducted through research, experiences, numerous discussions that I've had with Agile professionals for this particular study, and also a Humble Agile survey that was sent across to a lot of professionals. I myself come from an army family. So growing up, changing schools, changing cities, changing countries, it was normal. It was just very, very normal. At a point where I was asked to go down 7,000 steps in a valley to go to school, which was great. The only factor was I had to come up the same 7,000 steps to go to home. And now, as an Agile coach and a practicing Scrum Master, the fascination still continues as to what is the motivation to let people be more adaptable. What makes them more approachable towards what we're proposing with the Agile format? Shane mentioned very nicely that companies can be agile when people are agile. So I think that's the notion that this whole study is around. In companies, when we want to have certain meetings or anything, we say, let's make it exciting, let's keep things interesting. But those are great things to do on an external front. On an internal front, what can we do with our qualities? What can we build upon to be more agile? I think this is what got me to the next thought. It could be a similar image to what Shane was talking about, but I promise you I didn't make it right away. It's a very famous picture. It's got roots at the bottom with values and agile at the top. Quite the similarity of the metaphor of the garden with that of a tree. But one of the things in my study that I've realized is values is just the tip of the iceberg. We want to tweak those values with the Agile Manifesto, the 4 values, the 12 principles. How many times have we seen people who say, I know the values, I know the principles, I'm an expert? But it's a much more deeper concept than that. Individuals go through experiences, bittersweet. These experiences build on your biases. They determine your behavior and your belief system, in line contributing to your value stream. Based on this, we see habits created, our adaptability quotient that is improved or decreased. We make choices. We make everyday choices. Choices to continue to learn, choices to react to certain situations in a certain way, choices to be kind. All of this contributes to the mindset that we talk about, right? The fixed mindset, the growth mindset. The growth one being one where we think that, okay, our qualities can be modified when and if needed. So the choices matter. During the Humble Agile study, I've been able to begin with 2 major questions. The first one is, what if we could know the qualities that make us make those choices, right? And the second is, how do we connect these choices to the Agile values? The reasons for continuing with these questions was simple. From the Humble Agile survey, I found out that 87% of people agree that even if you know the Agile Manifesto, you don't quite practice on it. There are so many anti-patterns. So the knowledge is not enough because the manifesto clearly tells us what to do to be successful. And all of us want to do that. But what can we be in order to do all those things is something that I've tried to explore upon with the study. During the interviews that I conducted with Agile professionals, the top concerns that came up were these: higher attrition rates, visible conflicts among teammates, employees feeling uncomfortable with micromanagement, a tug for the credit done. I did this, you did this, I did not put a hand to this if this is a failure. Difficulty in having conversations with opposed views. All of this lead to the same thing, that there's a lack of energy and zeal to join that so-called change wagon. Oh, we're going agile? Oh, I don't think so. That's what we generally have inside, but we always try to tick the boxes and say, let's do this process, let's do this process. If any of these seem familiar to you, then we're not far from reality, and I'm glad that the study brought that out. To solve for these enlisted concerns and to build a community of growth and progress mindset individuals, the study is led to identify the 6 top qualities that one can practice with a foundation of kindness and compassion to be better equipped at being agile. The qualities, the humble agile qualities. As we saw earlier with the tree, adaptability is a behavior and agility is the consequence of that behavior. So we ought to probably get to the roots of the issue and not just tap on the head with agile quality or with agile manifestos, right? The 6 qualities, as they form the acronym of humble, are honesty, unbiased, mindful, brave, listening, and empathy. All these qualities are great, but they need to be practiced upon the foundation of kindness and compassion. Why the name humble, you may ask? As a result of the Humble Agile survey, humility is by far a person's most expected trait to see among their peers. We see so many LinkedIn posts about you need to be humble, you need to practice humility. There's a considerate amount of emphasis and research that has been based on humility being a key aspect for leaders, which is great. But each individual also can be humble while gaining the knowledge and being that change agent. As Shane said earlier, everyone can be a leader, and that's the beauty of Agile. So we ought to have all of these qualities so all of us can lead with examples. What I've noticed with the study is that various permutations and combinations of these qualities are needed to be agile. And when considered together, the approach hopes to inspire people in their agile journeys, whether it's personal or professional. They do work at personal levels as well. Let's just quickly look at the foundation. The first pillar of foundation, as I said, is kindness. Pretty simple. We see a lot of Instagram posts, a lot of LinkedIn posts, everything on Facebook. It's very simple. Be kind. Are we really kind? Can we introspect that? Do we accept initial iterations not being perfect? Do we show patience toward control mindsets around us? Are we appreciating each other enough? Do we have comfortable conversations when the other person does not agree to us? We can ask these questions to ourselves, which lead to a lot of challenges when we are not being able to practice kindness. Kindness generally is an act that we want to show dignity to the other person by not harming that person, right? 97% of people mentioned on the survey that kindness is a much needed agile aspect in an environment. I was asked by a lot of people, what do you mean by being kind in an agile environment? Does it mean I need to donate a lot of stuff? Do I just need to keep smiling if it doesn't mean a lot to me? Is it forceful smiling? Well, those are great things to do. Nobody can stop you from being them. But there are a few tips where we can actually make a conscious effort to be kind. The first one being, be genuine. Authenticity is quite important. We have a lot of leaders who have already done it in the past. I'm not going to name them, but when there's fake kindness, you identify it. You know you're the identifier. So it's very easily identifiable. So be genuine in your kindness. The second is be persistent. Hold your kind nature, no matter what other people say about it. Again, I want to add that this is in no form an indication to have abuse upon yourself, right? In which case you probably want to be kind to yourself first. This is not an external entity that you have to do with other people. It's also internal. So being kind to yourself is also equally important. And the last thing is practice the 2 daily. The top 2 can be practiced on a daily basis, but also as another extra aspect, there have been instances where you can practice something as part of your passion or your interest that can be a constant motivator to sustain a kind pattern of thought. I've spoken to people who take up painting or reading. Traveling, thanks to COVID, is not an option in 2020, but that is one too. The next pillar is compassion. I know it says compassion is empathy plus action, but the formulas seem very simple. We ought to give a deeper thought to it. It's about putting yourself in another person's shoes, seeing the world through their eyes, and understanding that you want to lessen their suffering of any kind. There's a beautiful book, The Art of Happiness, written by the Dalai Lama. It's a wonderful read. If you ever find time, please do that. Please read it. One of the people who read and reflected upon it was Jeff Weiner, who said that being a compassionate person helped him build better teams and a better company. All of us use LinkedIn, so we know what that means. Compassion brings about transformation eventually. One of the things that Deepthi just mentioned, right? The butterfly, from the cocoon to the butterfly, that happens when you give compassion into the environment that you're in. It is up to each person to contribute towards being that change agent. Based on Next Elements research, there is a compassionate mindset that was created as an antidote to workplace division. It helps you be genuine. It helps you be more generous with your activities at work. There are 3 switches that you can turn on in order to be more compassionate. The first one is of value. When you turn on the value for compassion, you view yourselves as valuable, equal, and deserving, and also the other people around you, irrespective of any biases, any feelings, any motivations, irrespective of that. The second is capability. We view people to be capable of being part of the solution and not giving up when faced with failure. And the last switch is responsibility. Accept that no matter what happens, we are all equally responsible and focusing on taking ownership. Might I add, compassion is also how we can be generous with helping others grow. The fact that Shane was talking about, we ought to make space for other people to grow because it's their space to grow in. We can't overtake that, right? Moving on to the next quality, honesty. So honesty is the first quality after the foundation that we talk about. Though the product is at the center of it all, delivering value is a primary focus, but honesty plays an immensely vital role on how each person involved sees the reality and acts accordingly. It builds upon 2 important entities that we've also heard upon in the AIR conference till now, trust and transparency, neither of which we can benefit from diminishing. There was a survey in 2019 by the Gartner Agile Enterprise that cited maximum people saying that the shifting from culture of control to one of trust was the top player in Agile successes. Where are we honest in this environment? We're honest in our retrospectives, in discussing complexities, contract negotiations, providing delivery timelines, or even building a roadmap. When we say that, oh, this delivery has to go in a March, and we know internally that that's not going to go, but we still agree, that's not right. It just leads to further more problems. There are a few challenges of being honest as well, right? I'm going to list the challenges and hopefully provide you the top ways that I've been able to identify through the study of how we can practice the same. The first challenge is if people on your team see you being truthful and honest all the time, but there's one time where you say that I can't do it this time. For this one time, I'm going to bend the truth a little. Even if it's in the best interest, the behavior becomes a norm, and it is something that people tend to follow. The second one is very undermined, but dishonesty takes a toll on your health. It triggers high levels of blood pressure, heart rate, and stress. Stress in line limits your logical thinking, your better decision making. The interesting part of this is that it's not just the people who act dishonest, but also who observe dishonesty have similar physiological effects. And that is scientifically proven. The last one is something that I have experienced, and I'm not sure how many of you, but this is too much information. We're oversharing. We don't require all this. I think this is said a lot in today's day and age, and honesty has become sort of undervalued for that reason. So Agile team members refrain from being honest as a mechanism to avoid any resistance or any consequences that come out of that honesty. On the Humble Agile survey, 91% respondents mentioned that honesty was among top 3 qualities they wish to see in colleagues. But might I say, in the interviews that I've been able to conduct, around 60 professionals that I interviewed, they've also said that there's a large struggle between identifying what is the difference between being blunt and being honest. Honesty having an integrity factor onto it, having a kindness factor onto it. So how do we practice being honest? Number 1 is observe and keep judgments aside, which we will talk about further in the next upcoming slides. But don't assume. Assumption is the worst enemy of any information that you want to learn. The next is be open to listen and learn from an opportunity instead of just jumping onto a defense mode. When we ask for feedback, we might as well be respectful for listening to it. The next is having an honest conversation about about positive as well as negative aspects, both, while keeping kindness and compassion intact. And the last, hold yourself accountable to the same standard as you would expect from others. Accountability is a two-way street. We have observed that many people find others accountable, but not themselves. This is a practice we can do on ourselves as well. Honesty is a factor for productivity, and we ought to be deliberate with it as well. The second quality that even Kiran touched upon was unbiased. This is a quality that even if we struggle with, we are unaware of it most of the times. We as humans are notoriously poor at recognizing biases, especially when we think it's the right thing to do, because our brains are wired in such a way that can help us make quick decisions with minimal cognitive effort. With high biases, it becomes very difficult to bring about change. Some of the challenges that can be visible, number 1 is very obvious, I think. Biases can be unhelpful by keeping us from considering a wide range of options or possibilities, blinding us from new information. The next, the most famous sentence of all Agile coaches on this call, I'm sure, is this is how we've always done it, and this is how it has worked for us. The resistance part of it, right? All of us have faced this sentence at one point or the other in our lives. The next is unconscious processing is prone to errors that remain unrecognized and uncorrected in due time. Like I said, resistance is just a part of it. It's just an adding factor. Biases are not individual. They have a tendency to worm into group activities as well. I think Kiran touched upon this, the bandwagon effect, right? When we're in an estimation and we want everybody in the team to estimate a certain user story or estimate a certain activity that has to be accomplished for as a goal. All the people say an estimate and there's one person who says, I'm fine with whatever anybody else says. That's the sort of unbiased that we want to root out. And that's the thing that we want to encourage also with another quality called bravery that we will touch upon. Scientifically, it's proven that there is nowhere where humans can be unbiased completely. So probably the word is a little misleading. Because if I go on a flight today, tomorrow, that's my confidence of the experience that I'm going to reach my destination safe. So I really better be biased if I want to get on that flight again. But by unbiased, I mean being a lesser biased version of yourself to achieve that common goal, to achieve a perspective that you have joined the team for. What can we do to do that? The first one is interact with people who have different opinions and values than your own. Being exposed to different people, including socio-demographic and ethnic diversity, make you more open and tolerant. I think that is why the Agile fraternity as such on a global level always want to mingle with each other. They want to know about each other, and that's the growth aspect. That's the beauty of it all. Like Mark Twain said, travel is one of the best things to do as well. To reduce biasness, right? It's an infallible elixir for biases, whether they're unconscious or conscious. Maybe in the near future. The next one is being mindful. The willingness to make an effort of addressing and minimizing the bias is a proactive approach that we can do on ourselves to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. We must ensure to seek out strategies so that we can actively encourage more viewpoints that can help us to reach that common goal point that we have joined that organization or that particular group for. The next quality is being mindful. We see mindfulness as a constant quality throughout this whole presentation that steers us into making improved choices. Mindfulness includes attention to detail, willingness to consider alternatives, and responsiveness to change. There has been a lot of extensive work that has been done on this topic alone. And there's some great agile coaches who even coach for this particular behavior in order to be more agile. The core areas from the fusion of agile and mindfulness are the defining characteristics of each approach. They stick around the people, simplicity, adaptability, and focus. If you notice on the screen, there's a lot of benefits from the same as well. So the two approaches can be termed as complementary, and that's why the high list of benefits. But even if you look at these benefits, I won't bore you by reading them out, but even if you look at these benefits, there are some challenges that go unnoticed. What happens when you're more mindful? This can lead to over-awareness of the current situation. You can get completely pulled into the current state. It becomes a cause for increased frustration and lack of focus of vision as well. The next is mulling, a lot of mulling. We tend to spend so much time in the current state just elongating the thought process for that the so-called fixing the situation time elapses. The last, due to increased distractions, thanks to technology, multitasking trends have been so famous now. How many of us have had to check our phones even while this whole conference is going on, right? The daily scrum having somebody checking the phone. So how present are we? There's so many distractions around. Being mindful can definitely be a challenge. How do we practice this? The first one is deliberately pay utmost attention to your thoughts and sensations. Keep judgments aside. Stay current. It helps in collaboration because working with people is probably the primary base of being agile. The second is a 3-minute breathing exercise. When there's a lot of stress being built upon, a 3-minute breathing exercise has shown that there is an immediate positive impact on decision making and improved listening in group activities. The last one is a more formal approach, meditation. All of us want to do it. At least most of us want to do it. Some of us find the time to do it. It's a more formal practice that you can take to improve that 1-point focus on yourself. On the Humble Agile survey, Agile practitioners agreed that there is an increased likability of higher productivity when we are mindful. So maybe this is something that we can practice upon as well. The next quality is being brave. Lots of bravery involved in being agile. We need to be brave to confront all the unknowns in the world, so much being thrown out at us. And we demonstrate bravery by having honest communications and exercising humility, the two qualities that we spoke of earlier. So many aspects in an organization come about as a result of being brave. One famous topic, autonomy. I've spoken to leaders in Scrum Masters, to be very precise, Scrum Masters and Agile coaches who say that an initial concern of micromanagement can be diminished when you are brave enough to provide that autonomy. Receiving autonomy is not easy as well. You require bravery for that also. It also means being okay to be vulnerable, which many of us struggle with, and very rightly so. But it only makes us human, and that's a concept that I've even further written about. A few challenges that we face. Fear in general is a much greater obstacle for us to progress than what we hold fear of. What would happen if we do this? What would happen if we do that? You know what? Just try it. I think the openness of experimentation is what Agile is providing, so we can be brave enough to try that out. The second is lack of bravery leads to indecisiveness. So this can cause a higher damage than making a wrong decision sometimes. I do stress upon resistance because when nothing is broken, change is hard to justify for many individuals. So this is definitely something that we can work upon. The next is we tend to be settled in our comfort zones and we fear any change of unknowns. The last is walking the talk. So many leaders talk about learning from failures, might I quote. We want to learn from failures, but we're dreading it ourselves. We dread that failure so much that we're not actually learning. So walking the talk becomes a challenge. A couple of things that we can do in order to counter these challenges are acknowledge, inspect, and specify your fear. What is it that you're actually fearful of? Acknowledging is part solution, and then you would probably figure out the next steps. The second is acceptance of your current knowledge and the lack of it. We always know everything. Only when we understand and accept the delta of not knowing something that opens the door of opportunity of learning. And the last is having difficult or uncomfortable conversations. When your team members or when people that you work with, any stakeholders, they hold back in order to just go with the flow. That's something we can identify and we can probably encourage for bravery at that front as well. Practicing honest and mindful conversations while being kind can build a better journey for being brave in the whole Agile front. The next quality, one of my favorites, is listening. It's a vital part of communication skills to reciprocate our understanding. Very simple. According to my study, most people have agreed to the fact that listening is effectively the most important skill ever. Funnily enough, the same individuals do not find a strong need to improve on their skills themselves. So that's just funny, right? We think that people lack it, but we don't think we lack it. This is how amazingly important this is. Research has proven that listening effectively can enable us to gain more information, reduce conflicts, improve that trust factor, motivate ourselves as well as others for higher levels of commitment. There are a few challenges in this front. A few interesting ones, might I add. The number one is listening is probably the hardest for people who tend to be habitual interrupters or are constantly distracted. I think I'm really glad that the group sitting here knows that they were like sharing the questions on the chat, but that's not probably the most disciplined group that we come across on a daily basis, right? The next is being veiled with perception and biases. It keeps us from perfecting this listening skill. The more biased we are, the more lesser we listen. And in the Agile world, more often than not, we come across individuals who believe that they always know more than the speaker knows. Always. Oh, what is he talking about? I think I've done more experience than he has. We always come across these people. This might lead to one of the three states: selective listening, talking over the speaker, or listening so that we can identify the next question. Again, not bad things, great things, but is this useful enough to work towards a common goal? That's what we want to talk about, right? So some of the tips in order to practice this listening is focus. Building focus involves removing these distractions and removing yourself from the center point. Only when you remove yourself from the center stage, you can give that center stage to the person who's talking. The next is be unbiased, like we spoke about. Carrying minimum bias enables the person to truly open their ears and minds to what is being said. The next is awareness. Being more mindful about a conversation can help an individual be a better listener. The last is a combination: interest, effort, and context. Without an actual interest in the speaker, it is difficult to focus on what is being said. We can be kind towards the effort that the person is making in order to share that information. Context is so very important to listen effectively. With today's cross-functional and distributed Agile teams, culture can also be seen as a form of a context that we need to be mindful about. With the Humble Agile survey, 70% of individuals that claiming that Agile experts lack the skill of listening, because we just want to talk, talk, talk. We want to tell people what Agile is. We want to tell them what it works like, but we don't listen as much. Though 26% people felt comfortable talking to their teams, it was contradicting to the fact that almost 57% of the same group felt that their teams don't listen to them. I think this can be an important thing that we want to practice upon. It's a contributing factor to people resenting their work as well as teams. So we probably don't want to be in that position where people resent their jobs. So let's listen a little. The last quality is empathy. In its simplest form, it's awareness of the people and emotions, their emotions, while understanding their perspective. It's often mistaken for sympathy, where we just feel the concern and we think, oh, it's good if they're better off. We saw earlier on that we all come from different experiences. You remember the tree thing? So empathy is basically the connectivity of emotions that emerge from those experiences for each one of us, not just for the other person. In today's world, we are bound to improve upon our personal attributes if we want to work with people, which is the very essence of agility. According to Daniel Goleman, empathy is also among the 4 key components of emotional intelligence, which many of us strive to achieve. We want to have a higher emotional intelligence quotient. What are the challenges that we do face? Number 1, teamwork and collaboration can seem challenging for individuals with lack of empathy. The next, interpersonal differences are ignored during poor team dynamics. And this is seen as a reason to let's add the process. Let's add a new process because it's not working. Let's add another process, it's not working. But maybe it's the people that we ought to be more deliberate with, right? We want to understand what is wrong with what is wrong that the people are feeling and the product is not working. So adding the processes is not the solution many times. The next is empathy is considered important or sometimes even limited to customer-facing roles. When somebody is on a customer-facing role, almost close to 30 to 40% of people that I spoke to said customer service people, agents, or sales reps, they definitely need to have more empathy than IT teams. I lead a technology team. Most of my team members did not even think empathy was a factor. But that's not what we want. Empathy can be instilled in every person, whoever is working in any team, whatever field whatsoever. And the next, placing blame on an individual can be natural, but yet it's a destructive pattern in teams. The last and most important is that there is a high impact. When people feel overly empathetic, they feel sunk into the emotional turmoil that the other person is feeling. And that's quite natural. That is absolutely natural. There are a lot of articles. During the study, I've come across these articles that say there's a quick fix or 3 quick tips to become more empathetic. But it's not as simple. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of mindfulness, as I said. But there are a few practices that can be started on to be more empathetic that are in line with Daniel Goleman's phases of empathy as well. The first one is realize how you see the situation and understand the perspective. It's an effective way to lead, for example, performance reviews or understanding the team's feelings if you're the leader. Excuse me. It's called cognitive empathy, and I've star marked it because it has a flip side. If you are able to understand people so much that you're able to talk in their language with a little bit of a twisted motive, you can manipulate them with false information as well. So we want to be kind, we want to be mindful, and have this cognitive empathy so that we don't harm the other person. We're not able to manipulate them as much. The next one is building emotional connect. It's called affective empathy because it affects people, feeling what the other person is feeling. Not caring about how the other person feels gives us a free pass to not be bothered about how they feel when we make them feel miserable. If you notice, I say a lot of feel, because that's what caring is all about. We want to care about people. And that's what creates the rapport and the chemistry, as we say, when we work with people. Or these two developers have the best rapport. Why? Because they know what each other is feeling. They have that counterproductive action going on. But again, star marked, it's a flip side. It can lead to emotional exhaustion. When you're feeling too much about the other person, it's quite natural that you get exhausted. A counter to this is to be mindful. Be more self-management, acquire more self-management and be more mindful so that you can handle the distressing emotion. And to be honest, if you're compassionate, then you know that you don't have to sink into it. You just have to make sure that you understand it enough to resolve it. The third one is practice compassion. Like I said, it just leads us directly there. Some of the compassionate people have always turned out to be the best organizational citizens, good team players, willing to help other people rise. And we can surely use a lot of it in the Agile world. A little bit about the survey that was taken, right? This was taken with 100 Agile professionals. So during my study, a few interesting aspects I've mentioned on here. 57% of the people, of the total population, were 5 years or less experienced in the Agile world. And 87% of them mentioned that Agile is a challenge, which is quite normal. And might I add, it's even expected for somebody who's joining on that journey. It's a change, right? It is uncomfortable. Something surprising, however, were a few more aspects that 22% of people have experienced acknowledgement from their teammates for the good efforts that they have done, which shows that individuals lack a little bit of compassion here. There might be delta views about being agile and their behaviors. But what's great is that 100% of the people who took this survey said that they can see improved agility when they know themselves and they know the people around. So this thought is our guiding star. Our personal qualities are what contribute to building great teams and products. Keeping the people interested along the side, right? So that is also important. The key takeaway from this paper, however, for me is to build upon these qualities so that we not just learn from the manifesto of what to do, but we also learn who to become along this journey of agility. If we could bring about some ethics with the behavior that we have, this would be looking at a bigger picture for the Agile world. Because I've searched a lot during the study, and I've also read a lot of, even Shane Hasty had mentioned this in the past, that Agile does not have any ethics as such to follow, even in the coaching world where general coaching has ethics in place. So this behavioral pattern can build upon that concept for us. A few observations from this study to conclude, I'd like to share. All these qualities mentioned under the Humble Agile are very interlinked. You would have seen, if we want to be unbiased, we want to be mindful. If we want to have empathy, we want to be compassionate. They're all very interlinked. Without kindness and compassion, we could be individual qualities. Individually, we could have these great qualities and still move ahead, but working with people becomes a challenge. The next, people who believe that they can get along by just ticking boxes, following processes, they're in their comfort zones. They don't have the willingness to do something about growth in that particular field, might generally not find value in all of this. And that's fine too. There is a demographic that does not feel bothered about the behavioral pattern as such. They just want to get the job done. The last is, when practiced together, these qualities reap better results in the long run. I want to add that some other aspects to this study are still being worked upon. For example, the demographic, the cultures, the genders, to understand the delta between the Agile minds that we have. And another disclaimer for Humble Agile is, it's not about creating an army of same people, because the differences is what we want to celebrate, but we also want to respect those differences by being that version ourselves. Humble Agile intends to create individuals and teams that find value from being agile and not struggle much. I think, like Shane Hasty said, that it's strong at the core, but it's adaptable at the edges. So providing that preliminary base for future research on personal agility is this how this journey started. I actually love the idea of Agile Nation. I've quite followed the work of Jacinda Ardern, and she's definitely a true leader. So people cooperated with her goal, and the nation has all these accomplishments. So again, that also proves that people make a difference. We ought to hold the mirrors up to ourselves as well. I'm going to leave you with this image just so you can relate to what I spoke about and probably reflect upon what happy side effects Agile can also bring upon if we work upon ourselves as well. I really want to thank everyone for listening through this and sitting through this presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Shruti. Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Shruti. You will be amazed if you see the chat windows. I leave it to you to enjoy it at leisure. Apart from the clarity, flow, structure, which people have loved, they also like your constant smile, your humble tone, and the fact that your presentation is so complete and it has touched upon each and every thought and process. So folks,
I appreciate that.
Sorry.
No, I said I appreciate that. The idea, I just want to say that in my experience, I've always seen we're doing Scrum, we're doing Agile, we're doing this. People hit you with the head on it. But I'm hoping this name can reflect upon that. People cannot shout at you and say humble Agile. They have to have a soft tone to their voice, right? Because you can't hit somebody with the head and say, we are practicing humble Agile. You can't do that. So you
Very well said. Yeah.
Have done a lot of, you must have practiced quite a bit. Not that you had a tone which was less humble earlier. I have been interacting with you for quite some time, but then, yeah. So, while your paper definitely leaves us with food for thought on the various humane qualities, their appropriate mix and match, which will help us become better individuals, which is so essential to be a great agile professional. We have a couple of questions on the chat window. I encourage the audience to put their thoughts into words as we are getting these questions answered, so that you can shoot your questions directly as soon as we are done with these. Swanindra has a question. In fact, it's a thought, but it's a question as well. Unfortunately, being compassionate is usually written off as being soft. How can we overcome this assumption? Basically, this whole thought of being a double-edged sword.
Yeah, and actually, that's a great question. You know what, Pranindra, I myself have stumbled upon that quite a few times because compassion, I think the quality of compassion is something that we want to explore further upon, because what we are saying is if we're more empathetic, then that's more towards weakness, right? But if you're compassionate, then you're feeling what the other person is feeling, but you're also wanting to resolve that. So that person remains affected by that change that you are bringing about in their life. That's not a form of weakness. That's only a form of strength, if anything. If you're can I give you just a quick example? In the armed environment, right? So it's just a quick notion, something that I learned. In an army environment, my father trained so many officials who went on to hold higher ranks than him. But he remained a lower level. So he remained a 3-star, but they became lieutenant colonels and brigadiers and all of that. So when they come back and they salute to him, they still salute with respect, but they don't need to because he's still a junior to them. I would always ask, do you not feel bad that this is happening to you? Like, you trained them, they've gone to a higher position, and now what is this? And then he'd say, you know what? I helped them achieve their best. And that's my privilege. I could not have snatched it from them. It is theirs to grow. So if you are a part of that journey, it is your privilege. You cannot snatch somebody's, how do you say, their talent or whatever. You're just a ladder for them. So that opportunity itself isn't greatness. I understand that that is something for ourselves to feel. But weakness is a perception of somebody else.
Exactly.
And like
the guy who I show compassionate on will be happy. But another guy, particularly the managers, feel that you are being soft. So if you are soft, things won't work. That's very much anti-agile, but
I think the person who finds it weakness needs to learn bravery. If that person can be brave enough to trust that you had the best intentions in heart, then please share this with him as well.
Thank you.
Well said, well said.
Shane also mentioned in his presentation that we need to give them the right environment, right? In that metaphor of a garden for a plant, so that the plant realizes its potential.
Correct.
Right. So that is what this whole thing is about. You help the other realize their true potential, right? So the next question is, well, Prasad has quite a few questions, which is great.
Yes.
How do we bring about consciousness in agile teams? And there's an add-on from Sri Anand, especially when we are dealing with vendors during joint ventures. So yeah, rousing their conscience, making them conscious. This question revolves around that, especially when there are third-party vendors.
When they're third-party vendors, there might be more context to this question. So I probably need to know more context, because it's a very open question. It might be experience level, but generally, if we are in a position where this is a third-party vendor going on and this is what's going on, then I think listening carefully helps for us to make our next action. Because sometimes, even if it's a third party, we want to probably combine the concept of listening effectively and also trying to be, I'm repeating myself, but also trying to be compassionate towards it, because I understand these feel like very high level notions for now, but when it gets into practicing, listening can have an immense impact. Because sometimes what happens in one of these studies that I spoke to a couple of other people, in fact, 2 people that I spoke to for the Humble Agile survey were vendors, generally for another company, not for mine, but they shared a similar experience of going to the customer site. They had that question, right? So I think it's on both ends, and listening to each other carefully will definitely help get that next plan of action in place. That's something I can say off the top of my head, but I'm sure I can come up with a better answer in due time.
And another point that you mentioned, Shruti, was about stepping into the other person's shoes, right? Looking at it from their perspective.
Yes.
Gauging the scenario from the opposite, especially during contradictions and controversies.
Yes.
Right. So the other question that we have is again from Prasad.
Yeah.
How to do it in agile team meetings, especially in Scrum, and who has to drive this? Prasad, I am so sorry. I don't know the context when you have typed this this particular question. Could you please elaborate on this? How to do it is how to do what?
I think how to practice being humble.
How to practice being humble, or is it how to keep people from getting distracted and to listen?
Yeah, the context is not clear.
Sorry. No.
Yeah,
So
can you repeat that question, please?
Okay. Which question you are asking about? Because I have raised a lot of things.
So, you've typed a question at 7:32. how to do it in agile team meetings, especially in Scrum, and who has to drive this?
What is this in that question?
Okay, I think this was raised when Shruti has spoken about the humble way of the consciousness and how to handle if we are having the Scrum meetings or the other Agile train meetings. Okay, so how and who has to drive this humble way of doing this meetings? Who
Oh, sorry, I didn't let you finish. Go on.
No. See, we have some roles to do it, right? So I just wanted to know, and who will be the right person? Okay, because in field of agile and in the agile is being taken as methodologies in some organizations where they are not practicing agile; they are following agile. Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. That's why my question came here. Okay, who has to rightly do it? Okay, while practicing the agile and not following the agile.
Who has to make sure that all are humble? That's the question.
Yeah.
I think this has a much different perspective. I urge you to change your thought a little, because whether you're following agile, whether you're following waterfall, whether you're following anything, a humble agile is something that's an individual thing. It is not for one person to drive. It is for each individual to become. And I think that is the intention of creating this. If you require somebody to drive it, then I think I don't know how your organization structure works. In some, maybe the Scrum Master could do it. In some, the Agile coaches could do it. People who have that authority or people who have that influence on the team. I think influence is a better word than authority, because yeah, we don't like that word. But maybe a lot of influence. Somebody who has a better influence can probably start instilling this in each individual. But it's an individual journey. It is not something to do if you're being this is a set of qualities that if you practice, you can be better equipped at being agile. So it's...
If I may add to that,
yeah,
humble is what she's coming up for everybody, anybody, as a group of qualities which will improve your being a human being. And I think humble can be attached with anything: humble agile, humble upbringing, or humble human being, or whatever you want, you can have this attached to. So I would say it is not a person or a role which will be dictating or implementing it as a rule or a framework or a methodology in any organization. It has to be imbibed in the individuals, and that may help as an organization, as a team, to achieve your agility.
Also, this is not a framework. This is more of an approach. I consider humble agile to be an approach towards individuals. So it's easier to apply on ourselves more than on other people.
We call it as more in a kind of a personal agility approach, where you actually make yourself more, agile on your personal front, when you can actually acquire these qualities and imbibe them and make yourself ready for anything.
And Prasad, may I add that currently I'm working on creating a few workshops for this. Okay. So if that works out, then I'm game for helping you on that.
And one more thing is, nothing is like individually correct in this, and circumstances will make you choose between these qualities, and a combination of that and a percentage of being empathetic and percentage of being an active listener and giving your feedback honestly, and all these things are a combination you have to actually acquire. Without your understanding, subconsciously you will have them in you, and whenever you are actually becoming something like a coach or a helper to the other person, a mentor, these things will help you to understand the other person's problems, are trying to drive them towards the solution. And this approach has to be in you as an individual. It is, see, even if you are a new parent, this is going to help you to give an approach to your child's upbringing as well. As a parent, you can actually imbibe these qualities in them. Or if you are actually having any toddlers or any teenagers, you can have a recap of all these things with them. See, it's like a Panchatantra story for me. You can listen to the story. If you want, you will approach that way, or if you don't want, nobody can make you take that approach.
Actually, that's what one of the observations I had from the study was, that people who don't see any value in that personal agility might not find value in this, and that's
all
fine.
All of us might have heard the stories when we were small about Panchatantra or any other kind of stories which has morals. And a moral is something which is up to you whether you want to accept it and use it, or you want to practice it.
Yeah, I also agree with you. Okay, if a person doesn't have a personal agility, and then they are definitely not for agile.
Yeah, and add to your question also, Prasad, some roles in agile like RTEs and coaches and scrum masters, these people have to give a lot of thought to people as well as process and product when we talk about the 3 Ps. So these roles, if they have already got to the stage where they have subconsciously or unconsciously accepted these qualities and are ready to work with you, that would be an extraordinary person in that role.
Yeah. Actually, if I put this question in a different way, right? Okay, when we are going to implement the humble agile, okay, we have a team where agile team, we have scrum master and agile personalities. Okay, who you think that first we need to make first person who is to be humble, whether it's a scrum
organization
master.
leadership. Organization leadership.
Very nice answer, Nagini.
I love the question, Prasad.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, because we actually experience this in a lot of organizations. Every people in organization leadership says, hey, this is what, right? Agile, okay. Then we start scrum meetings and everything will go, why you finish scrum meetings?
That's what I was saying.
15
Your
minutes.
leadership has to come into this mode. Only then they will understand why a scrum master is behaving in that way, or why an RTE is giving emphasis to the people, process, and then product, and why a person as a coach is coming and driving it from the people's perspective. Only when your organization leadership understands these qualities are very important for Agile, nothing can be changed, and whatever change happens, it's only superficial.
Okay, if I emphasize and if I give credit to Shruti on her braveness, okay, that should come for your braveness, where all these team members have to give your thought on this agile to all the organizational leadership. You should have the braveness to give this thought of agile to them.
Sure.
Yeah. That is the foresight we have on our paper.
Yeah.
Running out of time. In fact, we have crossed our max limit. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Time is up for this session, for the research.
Well done, Shruti. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Another important outcome from this conference, apart from choice and humble agile, the next outcome. And thanks, Nagini and Nazar, for facilitating this. I really want to specify one point and conclude this one. Shruti has spent enormous effort into this research. She has gone through more than 200 references meticulously, each and everything, and then without taking any of that influences, she also conducted the survey with 100 agile professional, and the outcome is this. So such an extraordinary effort will never go waste. It will grow. This is the seed, and you are thrown here and it will grow. All the best for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So Nazar, please, up to you. Please proceed with the next one.